Welcome to Woodward Wings. I am Satawa, and I'm here with my man Flannel Sam. And it has been a very interesting week, surprisingly. Usually, when the season wraps up, you got a couple weeks of just kind of easing out of it, enjoying the NHL playoffs. But we got some heaters this week, actually. Comments in the media, some injuries that happened during the season that were not disclosed. So we're gonna dive into all that this episode. I'm excited. How about you, Flannel?
It's more eventful than I would have thought, but at the end of the day, that's just good for us. Shout out Dylan
Yes.
Larkin for speaking your mind, man.
Yes. So I do want to caveat that with telling the people that yes, that clip online, he did say those things, and we'll get into that. But before he said those things, he did take accountability for his play. He did say that he got hurt at the Four Nations and he needed to play better down the stretch. He knows that, and he admitted that before he went on to say that the group was disappointed that they didn't add at the deadline. And to me, Flannel, I think that was him speaking for the team. He wasn't speaking for himself. I think that was him putting some, maybe not pressure, but I don't have a better word to describe it, but putting a little pressure on Steve Yzerman to get free agency right this year, to make sure that they add the correct pieces to this team so that they can compete and make the playoffs and compete in the playoffs.
I think that that's a good caveat to it all, especially when you actually find out that Dylan Larkin did take accountability, because both things can be true. Dylan Larkin, if he was hurt, obviously hockey doesn't do a great job, the NHL doesn't do a great job of disclosing injuries, but whatever caveats there are, Dylan Larkin wasn't good enough down the stretch, and I don't think that he was good enough throughout the totality of the season. His production did take a dip. But at the end of the day, Dylan Larkin, whether he's your 1C, your 2C, or trade bait, but I'm just going to go with 1C or 2C, he's going to be a part of this team when they're ready to compete. Do you know who's not going to be? Guys like Justin Holl, guys like Vladimir Tarasenko, guys like Eric Gustafsson and Jeff Petrie, JT Comfer, yada, yada, yada. The reality of the situation is the free agency was not good enough. I would say in terms of adding to this season, I'm sure Dylan Larkin was a little underwhelmed, or the team was a little underwhelmed by Craig Smith and Peter Mrazek, even though Peter Mrazek did play well. I'm not mad at him for saying that, especially, or for making his feelings known, especially when you give the context of he wasn't making excuses for his play. It's just, I think Dylan Larkin, to some extent, maybe even knows his limitations, that he's not going to carry a team. I mean, nobody really can carry a team in the NHL. Let's just be quite frank.
And they can't. You're seeing it with McDavid and Draisaitl right now, struggling with the Kings. They are the two best players in hockey, yet they haven't won a Stanley Cup yet. I mean, it just proves on that point. And I think that, it blew up. People were saying a lot of stuff, which we'll react to those later. I have a bunch of comments that were in the under the post about the Dylan Larkin comments that honestly gave me a good laugh. But at the end of the day, Dylan Larkin needs some support. He played without a third line mate almost the entire season. He's playing hurt. It's tough to play hurt. And you got to respect that. You got to respect the fact that he still went out there hurt. Don't know the extent of the injuries, but even when you're going out there hurt, you're not at 100%. It is a grind to get up and play every day. I've played through a broken rib for over a month. I played a tournament with a broken wrist. It all sucks. Nothing when you're not at 100%, it is a grueling experience trying to play games and trying to be at 100%. It's almost impossible, especially in a sport like hockey where you need every physical tool that you have in your tool bag. And with Larkin being hurt, it just limits him. And so it kind of sucks that's how you have to grade his season, because I think he was having a good season before the Four Nations, and now he's being looked at as having a disappointing season because of the way he performed in March, which he needs to perform better. But that's kind of sad because I just think the injuries are just brutal.
But that's the thing, because, yeah, Dylan Larkin, he was hurt. He didn't play well enough down the stretch, but it was also the team was just not good enough. And Dylan Larkin, even though I have given him, I think, his rightful criticism, the team is just, it can't withstand even a small Dylan Larkin regression. And that's not necessarily on him. And don't get me wrong, it doesn't excuse it, but if the team, Dylan Larkin needs to be insulated more. Everybody knows that. It's needed to be that case his whole career, even though I understand he was there during the darkest early days of the Yzerman rebuild, but I think that wears on him because let's just look at the 2 seasons previous. Dylan Larkin was point a game, and for whatever reason, they didn't make it. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that last year when he went down for just a few games, nobody stepped up. I understand his frustration at this point.
Yes, 100%. And if you want to come out and you want to say and you want to make the point that Dylan Larkin's health and longevity need to be questioned because of the fact that our collapses have been in the last 2 seasons have been correlated to the fact that he has just gotten an injury down the stretch, then you can make those claims. But what you can't do is say that he's not a good enough player to contribute on this team and to be one of their better players. That's where you kind of lose me in that debate, because I'm seeing on Twitter, and I've had these arguments with on Twitter about Dylan Larkin and put him on the third line, like trade him, take away the seat. You just gotta relax, okay? Like the sky is not falling. He is going to be our captain. He's going to be here for years, and he has more value to you than he has to anyone else. Because if you're trading him, every team is going to look at that like, oh shit, the Wings are desperate. We can take advantage of them. And you got teams like Winnipeg, Vancouver, Montreal, just licking their lips, trying to steal him away from you. You don't want to give him up. You don't want to put this pressure out there, even if it's just on social media and it's nothing and it's just gas. It doesn't matter. You don't even want to put that out there for people to see and to get that idea in their head, because he's not for sale. He will be here for the eternity. He is the one veteran that I can guarantee you will be here by the time that this team is competing. 100%.
That's
full
fair.
stop.
That's fair. And you raise a great point about Dylan Larkin. I think even around NHL circles is seen as probably the face of the Red Wings still. I would say undoubtedly. If there's even any rumblings about Dylan Larkin being traded or whatnot, it will be like, what is wrong with this guy, which will make him depreciate. So you're 100% right. He's going to be here, and he's never going to be a 3C. Good. I know we're going to get into more of that later, but that's lunacy.
The comments were wild. Well, so another wild thing. So I have, I'm just gonna be honest. I have a learning disability that causes me to be bad at reading dates and times and screwing up my calendar. So I drove to Grand Rapids last night, thinking that was the first round of the AHL playoffs, and it's actually next Tuesday. So I made an hour drive there and back for no reason, because I was so excited to see my sweet king ASP play. I can't lie. I was too excited. And that's the type of guy I am. I'm the type of guy that will show up a week early on accident and then still show up a week late. And I'll show up twice instead of not being there once. That's the type of person I am. And I take pride in that, okay? So I don't even care if I get chirped for that. I take pride in making sure that I'm there when I need to be there, even if it's a week early. On another hand, ASP has looked pretty solid in his debut. He's looked a little shaky defensively. I think that the shift to the smaller ice has kind of caused him a little bit of trouble. But when it comes to the transitional game, the offensive game, holy crap, man. He looks so comfortable with the puck. You can tell that he's got something different when he has the puck on his stick. He's just so fun to watch, and it makes me extremely excited to watch him continue to get used to the North American game, to continue to improve. And with the way that he seems to have improved from game 1 to game 2, I expect game 3 to be his best game yet, especially with another week of practice under his belt in North America. Expect that to be big for him. On the other hand, Michael Bronzig-Nygaard made his debut as well. He's looked a lot more familiar with the ice, because I think his play style, it kind of benefits him. He's a bigger dude, which way the North American game is played, and it allows him to kind of work in those tight spaces where he excels. And he's looked comfortable. It looks like he's probably going to need a year in the AHL, at least half a year. But he's looking like he's got some promise. So a good update on them, and hopefully I can have some real, minuscule observations when I'm there in person. There's just a level that you can't get when you're not there in person. So when I'm there, I'm excited. I want to see the way that he transitions out of corners after winning battles. I want to see him in battles, and I want to see him taking guys off the rush and playing them on good angles.
Well, and seeing them, I hate to say this, and I'm not ripping on fans or anything. I've even been there before until I was at this network. That they're names now. They're just guys who played overseas, and there's nothing wrong with that. We all know that they're promising. We all know that they're first round draft picks that we expect to contribute soon. But seeing them in the AHL, especially in high level AHL games, this is the playoffs, and I get it, it's the AHL, but still, the Griffins want to win it all. It's going to be huge, and I'm personally more excited about somebody like ASP because he could be one of the keys to even next year the Red Wings having success. I could see him being as high as on the second line, depending on what the Red Wings do, free agency and whatnot. So, if honestly, Justin, if I was able to, I would probably go next Tuesday as well. Unfortunately, I got some things to do the next day, but I will be tuning in any way that I can, and I'll be diving into those highlights because it's really one of the only rays of hope that we have at this point is that Steve Yzerman knows how to draft the young guys.
Yes, 100%, and it's good to see them in that high leverage environment, like you said, in the playoffs, because a lot of teams send guys down, and they're filled up with a lot more third and fourth line NHL guys, journeymen. Like we sent Austin Watson down and Soderblom down to play on the Griffins for their playoff run. So there's an even more pool of actual players who have touched NHL ice and have those years to make this tough on ASP and MBN. You want that. I want them to have their struggles. I want them to have to learn and have to grow as players in the short time that they're competing in this playoff race. But I'm obviously more focused on the Red Wings and what they're going to do for the Red Wings in the upcoming years. So that is dependent on this free agency, as we both know. And one of those things that has been highly talked about is the possibility of going after Mitch Marner. And that's great and would be absolutely fantastic if that happened. It's obviously still a fever dream. We're still going to have to give up the Bucks. We're still going to have to convince him to come to Detroit. There are still multiple avenues that this has to go down. So preparing for that avenue to go down bad, where do we go if we don't get Mitch Marner? Because obviously there's some B-level free agents that people have thrown out there. There's Sam Bennett, there's Ekblad, there's Garkiev, there's Provov. I don't know if the defensemen would be considered B-level. They're probably still A-level in terms of free agents, but they're not at the level of Mitch Marner.
No, and there's got to be a plan B. And of course, if Steve Yzerman has to play a little money ball, it's not what we want. It's not what'll get them over the top, but it might be all that's available. Honestly, if I'm just preliminarily thinking of what would be an acceptable free agency for me, I've already mentioned Cody Ceci. I think that the possibility of Cody Ceci and ASP on line 2, it's interesting. I'm not saying it's what it's going to be, but I'm saying it's certainly interesting with ASP being more of a puck mover. Also, if I'm looking at one other name that I'm interested in to give more, I think he would end up being a top 6 forward. Nikolai Ehlers from Winnipeg. That's a guy who's proven that he's an effective 5-on-5 scorer. He's had multiple 60-point seasons, and he has by no means been a power play merchant. I think that he would either be your top line or your second line, either left or right wing, and then you could have, obviously, Larkin and Casper be a center 1 and a center 2, and we all know that, like, the Raymonds and the DeBrincats, Kane, they'll fill everything else out. That, to me, would make them a playoff team if both of those guys play up to their potential.
Yeah, I agree. I actually agree with you. I think that is the one forward that really catches my eye. I think that Sam Bennett is a very risky choice, taking him out of that Panthers infrastructure where he really only has thrived. And he's not a big point guy. He's going to be a 2C. You're signing a 2C. And I think that if you're going to sign a 2C, you might as well sign Ryan Donato because he's going to be cheaper. I like Ehlers for everything you said. The 5-on-5 scoring. The issue is he's got strong ties to Winnipeg. My roommate is a Winnipeg fan, and he's told me like they are going to do whatever they can to sign him, because that's the thing. When you're in Winnipeg, it's so hard to bring free agents in. You have to keep your guys. You have to keep your draft picks. So losing Ehlers would be a huge blow for them. But you're right. I would love that. That would be one of the few moves on this free agent board where I wouldn't be looking at it like, oh.
Well, and that's maybe an underrated aspect. You might have to make him choke on a contract, which who knows if Steve Yzerman is going to do that. But even though Winnipeg, I'm sure it's a great city, and I know they have a great and diehard fan base, it is just in terms of geographical location, it's Siberia, and they have terrible
It's arguably
weather.
the worst destination in hockey.
Absolutely. They've got some of the worst weather of any major city in the world, not just North America. And of course, no easy access to even other Canadian places like Vancouver and Edmonton and Calgary. And no, like I said, no shade to Winnipeg whatsoever. It's just, it's a factor. And they're flying right now. They fancy themselves as a team that can win it all this year. And I guess if they win it all this year, it's, F all the rest of the time. But they got someone like Ehlers. If he's got ties, maybe it would be an overpay. I just think the player would be perfect. And I think the contract that Steve Yzerman could give, if we're talking about Mitch Marner, I mean, come on. That's if we're talking about being like, I'll give $14 million to Mitch Marner, I would probably make Ehlers choke on a contract if I were Stevie Y.
Yeah, I think that 14 mil is going to be what's going to get it done, though. And like that's a huge figure. But you got to think about it like this. Rantanen wouldn't take 3.5 from Carolina, but took 3.5 from Dallas because of the taxes. That plays a factor in these guys' decisions. And I know the Canadian taxes are going to be worse than what anywhere they play in America. So that's going to come into effect. Toronto could drive up the price of Marner and make it to a point where no one else is willing to pay him. That could happen. And there's so many possibilities. And I agree with you. There's got to be a backup plan. And in terms of the back end of this plan, we're going to have to bring in a D. You like CC. I personally, I want to bring in like a really good vet. Like I want a really solid piece that can really be here for the next 5 to 6 years and just bring this D core to the next level because they have another level. I was looking up. There's some great graphics I have, which I'll bring up in a little bit about Mo Seider. And Mo Seider, it shows flashes when he's with Edvinsson of both of them being a top 5 defensive pair in the NHL. And when they actually have a very solid defensive pairing with them, they are both fantastic. And with the lack of depth, and it makes them have to be spread out and not play like a true one combo. So if we could add someone like you saw with Lane Hudson, and I'm not even necessarily saying that he has to be ASP's partner. I just know that a really good veteran defensive defenseman would really help ASP and allow you to play Edvinsson with Seider. You bring in a guy like Ryan Lindgren, like Gargiev, like Provov, a lefty who's very good plus minus, block shots, makes the right play, defensively responsible, veteran, isn't going to cost more than Seider as well. Seider costs around $8.5 million. These guys, I would be utterly shocked if they're above 8. I think 8 is a very good number for them. It still gives you cap flexibility. And even if you strike out on Marner this year, which would be brutal, you will still be able to put yourself in a position where your goalies, your D-core are both finished. Let me say that again. Finished for the next 3 years. If you bring in a veteran-level defenseman that is very good, it is finished. You're not going to need to add anyone. You are going to go into the offseason of 2026, and you are going to need an offensive player that can score goals. You are going to be a piece away. And that's where you need to be. You need to continue to become a piece away. Right now, you are 6 pieces away. You have room to grow on this roster. You have to get to the point where you're, all right, we're a scorer away. And then we're competing in a playoff series. And we're not there yet.
No, most certainly not. And I definitely like the Ryan Lindgren idea. I think he's going to be huge for Colorado as well. And I know that's your cup team. They need help on their D-core. Like I'm seeing it now. I'm seeing a vision in my mind of Seider and Edvinsson, Lindgren or Cece and ASP, and then like Johansson and Sherratt.
And you need to give another buffer here to some of these defensemen. Like you got some solid guys in GR right now, but you need to give them some time. Like Anton Johansson just got there, and he was a 4th round pick. Byam is on his first year there, and they're showing flashes. They've looked good, but they're not going to be ready next year. You got to give them that buffer. Let Sherratt's contract get off the books in 2026, and then you got another D spot that you can fill. And you just constantly have this revolving door of prospects start coming up, but you have them start coming up now with a established core. You have an established Seider. You have an established Edvinsson. You have a semi-established Johansson. You have Sherratt, who's going to sit on that third line and just be Sherratt. And then you have, hopefully, a veteran-level defenseman that can play at a high level that you bring in that can complete this core. And even if you don't improve the 5-on-5 scoring, you can take away from their 5-on-5 scoring, which helps our ratio no matter what. If you just got to improve the defense and the offense at the end of the day. So if you improve one or the other, you got to be semi-happy about it.
You can what's the opposite of improve? Take away from their 5-on-5 scoring, and also take away from opponents' power play scoring. And we don't need to belabor that, but it deserves to be belabored because the PK was obviously awful. A Lindgren or a CC would certainly help, and that alone would do wonders for this team. Yes,
there's no doubt about that. And not having Hall out there for your PKs would be huge, because they don't seem to trust Johansson enough to play on the PK yet. For some reason, they trust Hall. And if that's the case, I do not want Hall on the ice. I would like to bring in someone that can fill that role. So filling those roles and talking about what we just talked about and the team needs that the Red Wings have, how would it look for a B or higher offseason for the Red Wings?
B or higher? I think what I just presented, Ehlers and Cody Ceci, and that's a B. Obviously, if you also combine like Casper taking a leap and Edvinsson and whatnot, if Simon Edvinsson is good enough to be pair 1 with Seider, and if Casper is good enough to be your 2C, if ASP comes up, I think that's a B level offseason, at least with an opportunity to be even a higher grade. Obviously, I would give damn near anything for a Mitch Marner, but we can't put all of our eggs in that basket. So what I presented, Nikolai Ehlers as a top 6 wing and Cody Ceci as your second line defenseman, that's a B to me.
I think that's a fair B. I think, and I'm gonna go down the grading scale. For A, I have, we get Marner and a defenseman.
Yeah.
Marner and a solid defenseman. I'm not gonna name who it is, but I'm gonna let's say Marner and a B level defenseman. My A- grade would be Provov, Gekiov, or Lindgren.
Okay.
That's my A-. My B is something like CC and Ehlers, CC Donato.
Okay.
I really don't want to sign Donato. I feel like he's another JT Compher move because he had that. He's had this one good season in his contract year, and I really don't know if that's going to be sustainable for him. So I am wary about Donato. So C or lower. I don't even want to think about that, but C or lower if there's only depth adds.
Yeah.
Like if we're only talking true depth adds and if it can move up to a B- if it actually does improve the PK. I will say that, but at the end of the day, we need some splashes here. Like this team needs a push.
I would agree with that, and I would be fine with my B move, your A move, your A- move, your B move. There's a lot of ways that this team can be improved, but I think in the interest of time, do you want to read some of those comments? Because I'm looking to dive into those.
Yeah, I got you. All right, so this is on a variety of different posts. So these comments are from the original Larkin presser, and then from under my tweet about the fact that if we traded for anyone, we would have had to give up Raymond or Casper, and then at that point, we still may have not made the playoffs.
Okay.
All right. That's wrong. They could have added some depth scoring and another blue liner for a second or third rounder. At least bring in something to let the guys know the GM cares. The bottom six was so weak to finish the season. Even a guy like Nyquist could have helped.
I mean, Nyquist wasn't who I had in mind, but I think there is more.
You saw Nyquist getting into the playoffs?
No.
He's going to be the one? He's going to be the one, right?
No, absolutely not. But for the interest of
the
last
third round
season,
pick has more value in Yzerman's pocket.
I probably would have shopped picks. I gave a few names at the deadline. My like blue liners were Radko Gudas and Connor Murphy because you'd have them for another year. I think you could get them for picks. And I also mentioned the Ryan Donato thing. I think, although that's tough too, because on one hand, I think Donato as your 2C and Casper as your first line forward would have been better, but I also like the Casper development as the 2C. See, this is where it's tough. So I don't hate that comment. I just think Nyquist was not the best name per se.
Yeah, not the best name at all. In the quotation marks, win the cup. Meanwhile, trading for another year of Mrazek. That makes sense, SMH. You know how much I hate the Mrazek slander. It is so overdone. He is the best goalie on this team. Like, watch the games. He has the best save percentage, the best goals against average, and doesn't let up weak goals. What more do you want from him? And you're going to flip him for a second-round pick in 3 months. Probably 6, but...
Well, I mean, they're just looking at, and this is with all due respect, because I get fan frustration. I think there's a level of anybody who played on the Blackhawks is a little bit radioactive. The fact that he struggled on the Blackhawks, they maybe look at that as more on him, even though the Blackhawks are a dumpster fire right now. Peter Mrazek, even though it's not the most exciting, he could. What if he's better next year than Talbot was this year? That's probably a win, even though not the most exciting win. But for next year, maybe it gets you a couple more points. Maybe you're in the in the running. And yeah, I know you're president of the Mrazek fan club, and that's okay. But I think it's more as a counter to people's like overblown slander.
Yes, I get that. But also, Veleno was a nothing burger, and he was a free agent this year, and you gave him up for an asset that is valuable to you.
Are people upset about Veleno? Are people upset about him?
Yeah, people were upset about Veleno. I was fighting in the comments.
Wild. That's a little wild.
A guy that was minus 23 and had 17 points in like 70 games. Yeah,
well, that's where I get off the highway with anybody who was upset or defending Joe Veleno.
Yeah, this one's a good one. Trade Larkin. He's not a winner in my eyes. You can't win with him here. He is the last player tied to Ken Holland besides Berggren.
Well, that's just like lazy analysis right there. And don't get me wrong, I've said it before and I'll say it again, Larkin needs to be better next year. But to say that he's not a winner, and I get it, the roster has continued to improve, but are you judging his 2019, 2020, 2021 seasons as part of it? Are you even judging 2022 when they really weren't ready to win? And at the deadline, Steve Yzerman traded guys like Bertuzzi and Hronek. Larkin's not the problem. He may not be the solution that is gonna get us over in the role that he currently is in, but calling him not a winner is just lazy.
Yeah, I mean the fire Yzerman comments, the trade Larkin comments were in full effect on these posts. It was pretty crazy. Red Wings players feel hurted at the deadline. That's why they sucked ass the rest of the season. What a whack, pathetic team, perfectly reflecting their captain.
I mean, I don't get with that either. And like I said,
can't make it up.
I've said this, Larkin and Raymond have to be better, but I don't think it was because they were hurted and not trying. I think it's just they're just not a good enough team. They're just not. Larkin and Raymond are part of it. They're not a good enough team. And there's there's fault to go around. You could blame Steve Yzerman. You could blame the fact that they were in such a hole on Derek Lalonde and Steve Yzerman as well. It's just, I don't like this idea that they dogged it or anything. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. Here's another one. Larkin is an overpaid 2C. Sign Mitch Marner and send Larkin to the third line. There's a couple issues with that, sir. First of all, Larkin's not a 2C. He plays on the first line. So if you send him down, it would be to the second line. Second of all, Mitch Marner plays wing. Have a little freaking nuance, man. Like, literally, like, watch a single game. Mitch Marner plays right wing. If we get Mitch Marner, he will be playing with Dylan Larkin and with Lucas Raymond, not without them.
What have we talked about? What did we talk about in previous shows? That if Dylan Larkin might be able to be a 1C if Mitch Marner's on his line. Not all 1Cs are created equal. They're not all McDavids or McKinnons. And I know I sound like a broken record, but if you insulate Dylan Larkin like that, I've said it, and again, I've been critical of Raymond and Larkin, but if you bring Marner to this line, I said it on a previous show, that's 275 points from your top line. I think book it. And Dylan Larkin will get so much better and feel so much less pressure. That's the role that he would thrive in. And that's what people who send stuff like that don't understand. Marner's not a center.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. He will thrive.
Right.
Like, you see how he was able to thrive on the power play in the first half of the season, just sitting in front and being that distributor and that goal scorer when he's called upon. And when you're with two elite passers like Raymond and Marner, you're just going to continue to get elite pass after elite pass in wide open areas. And Dylan Larkin is a good enough goal scorer where he's going to capitalize. If Marner is on this team next year, you can book me for over 35 goals for Dylan Larkin. Straight up.
Ooh, that's okay. I would probably.
But I'm completely serious. With Raymond and Marner on his line, he will easily eclipse 30, and I would be betting on 35.
You know what? I can't be mad at that because we've never seen Dylan Larkin play with that kind of talent except at like Four Nations and All-Star games and, you know, Team USA as a whole. But I think we've got time for one more, so make it a good one. No
I will make it a good one, but that's actually not even that tough of an ask. He had 33 goals last year. I'd be saying 38. I'd be saying 38 then. I'd be saying he's getting close to 40.
That's a playoff team.
Up.
That's a playoff team.
Yeah, it is a playoff team. There's no doubt. All right, I got to find my best one.
No pressure.
All right, here we go. But he's also only asking Yzerman to fix some of his failures from the last offseason. It's an avalanche of bad free agency and trades the last 6 years. Losing is the culture in Detroit now. It's hard to change that without completely overhauling the entire team.
See, I don't think overhauling the whole team is necessarily what they need to do. They need to add to what they've built through the draft because nobody's going to say that Steve Yzerman can't draft because he's done a great job. So that's where I get off the highway of overhaul the whole team. Does Steve Yzerman need to be better in terms of free agency acquisitions? Even the most ardent of the Steve bots would be absolutely. But we have most of what we need in terms of infrastructure in place. That's why we're talking about Mitch Marner would make a whale of a difference. And even lower level moves would make a difference as well. But that's where I get off the highway with this guy.
Yeah, I just think that, and what I told this guy, I was like, this roster has been getting overhauled for the past 5 years. And yes, there was mistakes made in free agency in that span. But at the end of the day, when this team's ready to compete, it will be overhauled because there will be no trash here. The Halls, the Gustafson, the Petries, the Berggrens, none of them will be here. The Smiths, the Motts, they're all going to be gone in 2 years. Like, there's going to be none of them on the books. And that's why this offseason is important. But even so, 2026 will be the most important free agency for this team because if they nail this one in 2025, they will have one of the biggest cap space pools in the NHL in 2026 with the ability to add to a roster that has very limited holes if they do well in 25.
And that's where you hope that playoff team goes to actual contender. And hopefully we're doing those shows in that time space as well. But is that a show, sir?
Yes, that is a show. Thank you so much for tuning in to Woodward Wings. It is a pleasure as always. Make sure you drop a like, comment, subscribe. We'll get to the comments next episode. I had some saved, but I got too into the Twitter DMs to bring them up in this episode. So we'll make sure we bring those in next episode. So make sure you drop those below. Thank you so much for your time and have a great rest of your day. This has been Woodward Wings. Peace.